from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
From fires to droughts to floods, weather keeps a grip on 2017. Plus, could a La Nina winter be in store? In Florida's orange groves,
and we've lost the majority of this year's crop.
in agribusiness, competition between proteins is heating up.
The bottom line is the world wants pork and the world wants poultry, and unfortunately beef gets the short end of that stick.
And teens with concussions may find new help on their smartphone.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Weather continues to take center stage in 2017. Today, possible relief from wildfires in the Pacific Northwest, the likelihood of La Nina returning this fall, and just how cool was the month of August. First, we begin in the Pacific Northwest, which has been ablaze in recent weeks. The National Interagency Fire Center says there are more than 60 active wildfires in 9 western states. 20 of those current fires are in Montana alone. The state has lost more than 1.5 million acres to wildfires, both private and public lands. Firefighters, however, may soon see a break.
And we're actually expected to get a little bit of moisture this week in form of rain out here on the plains and even some snow in the mountains, which will definitely kind of help out with the firefighting efforts, as summer comes to an end and we look fall right in the face.
The summer-long drought created the perfect tinderbox for wildfires. Montana continues to be the primary target of the drought monitor. Half of the state is in the combined categories of D3 and D4 drought, the most dire conditions. The latest drought monitor also showing dryness increasing in the Corn Belt. In the Midwest, from Ohio to Missouri, north to Minnesota, drought or dryness now covers nearly 40% of the region, nearly a 20-point jump in just the last week. Almost all of Illinois and 70% of Iowa facing some form of drought or dryness. While we're seeing dryness intensify in the Midwest, it was a rather cool month of August. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says August was the 9th coolest in the Midwest in 123 years. On this map, the darker gray color shows the western Corn Belt and Central Plains, which had the largest difference between normal August temps. The average temperature of 70.3 degrees, nearly 3 degrees below the 20th century baseline. Meanwhile, livestock folks from the Northwest to the Midwest should brace for the potential of a cold winter. The Climate Prediction Center just releasing its ENSO outlook, which shows an increasing chance of La Nina during the fall and winter months here in the Northern Hemisphere. They put the odds at 55 to 60% chance. USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says in addition to the potential for a cold winter across the plains and Corn Belt, we could also see stormy, sometimes snowy weather. Now in the southern tier of states, a warm, dry winter could show up. Those areas like coastal Texas and Florida have, of course, had an abundance of moisture. Hurricane Irma downed Florida's iconic crop, a devastating blow, destroying nearly all the citrus in some southern groves and seriously damaging others in the central part of the state. Of course, this is a crop that's already been severely curtailed by citrus greening. U.S. Senators Bill Nelson and Marco Rubio visiting groves around Lake Wales, Florida. They heard from growers who are seeking federal disaster assistance. Entire orchards have been blown over, and for growers with standing trees, much of the fruit was blown off. But none of it compares to more than a decade of fighting HLB or citrus greening.
Devastating hurricane, and we've lost the majority of this year's crop. But compared to 10 years of HLB, that really has taken your production, your crops, your grower returns.
We've been cut in half on a production level because of disease. This cuts that half in half.
Projections for the 2016-17 growing season had called for 68 million boxes of oranges. During the 1997-98 crop year, Florida orange growers produced 244 million boxes. That's a 70% decline in 2 decades, much of that loss due to disease. With the size and scope of Irma's damage, the fears are that farmers will be forgotten.
And then there's always the danger that in the mix of all the disaster and catastrophic loss that we're seeing in the Keys, which we really need to focus on, and all the other parts of the state, agriculture gets lost in the mix.
Senator Nelson says the best chance at this point to help Florida's orange growers will come in December with some massive omnibus spending bill. Florida's orange harvest usually begins around Thanksgiving and peaks in February. Many Louisiana sugarcane farmers were wondering if they were ever going to get their crop planted, especially after Tropical Storm Harvey. But sunshine returned, and farmers have taken advantage of the good weather. LSU Ag Center correspondent Craig Gautreaux has this report.
The sun is shining and fields have finally dried out enough for sugarcane farmers to get back to planting their crop. An especially wet summer and Tropical Storm Harvey were threatening to extend the planting season into the harvest. But good weather since Harvey's departure has allowed farmers to get back on track.
Most of our farmers are probably over 50% complete, which is amazing considering just a couple weeks ago we were really in a bind with all the wet weather, then Hurricane Harvey.
It's important for growers to finish their planting because some of the mills are opening soon. This earlier opening is being driven by an increase in acreage, and the crop appears to be a big one in terms of cane tonnage.
Mills are going to start a little earlier. They're going to be starting around September 20th in this parish. But it looks like if we can have another good week of weather, most of our farmers are going to be finished planting.
Dane Berard is one of the few cane farmers who plants billets instead of whole stalks. He was forced into planting billets one year because a hurricane had knocked down his plant cane and time was running out. He says there is a learning curve with billet planting.
We learned a lot. We're 2017 right now, so from 2002, you're looking at 15 years, you know, and we learn from a lot of mistakes.
One thing Berard has learned is that billet planting needs a more mature cane stalk, which requires him to wait about a month longer before beginning his planting.
We have ours perfected to that, but because of a 24-inch billet, you have to almost wait till the latter part of August and the month of September to get your iron matured.
Berard said a big advantage of billet planting is he can plant up to 50 acres in a day with a crew consisting of only 6 people. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue announcing special procedures to assist producers who lost crops or livestock or had other damage to their farms or ranches as a result of Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. Also, because of the severe and widespread damage caused by the hurricanes, USDA will provide additional flexibility to assist farm loan borrowers. Specific info is available at usda.gov or your local FSA office. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman taking a closer look at this week's drought monitor and some of the impacts in the field. Good morning, Mike.
Hi, Clinton. Iowa crops are feeling that dryness, according to Joanne Allenball. She snapped this picture near Redfield in central Iowa, about 25 miles west of Des Moines. She says while the picture is nice, crops are spotty and still very dry. The corn crop is still green and not close to being ready for harvest. However, farmers are starting to combine beans and some farmers are already doing fall tillage. Now, taking a look at the drought monitor, you can see the expanding area of dryness from western Indiana into the Central Plains remains very dry then across areas farther north. We'll have a closer look at that and have your forecast coming up. But first, some hometown temps.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
The lean hog market continues to sputter in the face of rising supplies. We'll check on demand potential coming up in analysis. And later, Ken Ferry discusses the importance of replant decisions and the impact it can have at harvest. And tell your teens to grab their smartphone if they're dealing with a concussion. We'll explain coming up in Ag for Your Health. In agribusiness, livestock seeing a bit of red while grains turn green in Thursday's trade. We get details from Florida CNN in Chicago.
Soybean market was sharply higher here on Thursday and has really performed pretty well as of late. We've got to start out with the USDA report, which was released this past Tuesday. The USDA told us that the national soybean yield was going to be bigger than it was in August, than the projection was in August, and quite a bit larger than most traders had expected. The knee-jerk reaction to that report was to sell off, and that's what we did on Tuesday early in the day. But we have rebounded and recovered all of those losses here on Thursday. The market's been acting very, very well, considering when you take into account a pretty bearish report from USDA. Part of the reason the market has acted well is because of demand. our export demand out of the U.S. for beans has been very, very strong despite big crops in South America. Part of this has to do with weakness in the U.S. dollar. The dollar's hovering around some multi-year lows, so the demand has been very, very strong. Live cattle market traded both sides of unchanged here on Thursday. We've rebounded a little bit here this week, but overall the market's been under quite a bit of pressure. Our nearby October futures have lost, I think, a good $10 a hundredweight since mid-July. So we've been in a pretty solid downtrend here. Again, Joe Vic from CME Group here in Chicago.
Lean hog futures making a fresh low this week. In today's analysis, Tyne Morgan asks whether demand can keep pace with those rising supplies.
Here now with Arlen Suderman. Well, Arlen, the week of Labor Day, we saw 2 new plants come online. You know, really, when we look at the supply situation, it looks like it's only going to grow here at the remainder of 2017.
It really does. It's a good thing we have those plants. It'll take a little while for them to get fully operational, but we saw a jump in the market as a result. Now, that came at a time when the funds were more favorable toward the commodities, including the meat complex, but we have the demand there. And so as long as we can, the consumer demand is there, the export demand is there, we just need to process those hogs. So we're glad to have the new plants in place.
Yeah, domestically, looking at demand, do you see demand increasing here at home?
We do, and we see it globally as well. And as we've looked around the world, we see that as income rises, demand for pork and poultry increases. And we see that certainly true here at home as well. And I think particularly the bacon craze has been the big driver. And that's why we saw the big crash late summer is we finally saw that bacon price, the belly price drop and collapse. And now I think we need to stabilize it and try to find where's the bottom in it. And I think we're approaching the place where we'll start to see that demand start to open up again and provide some underpinning.
Exports have been strong, but we continue to hear this trade pact rhetoric, whether it be with South Korea or within NAFTA. Does that worry you at all with the export picture? Do you think exports can continue on this pace?
Well, there may be some disruptions, and that's the concern. Negotiations run that way, particularly when you have a strong negotiator who's going to make a strong case and make threats in order to get the other side to the table. But in the end, I think the people that have been assigned to the task are believers in trade and are going to do everything they can to promote the trade, and that's what I'm expecting to happen.
So overall, looking at prices moving forward the rest of 2017, heading into the first quarter of 2018, kind of what's your outlook?
The bottom line is the world wants pork and the world wants poultry, and unfortunately beef gets the short end of that stick. But right now I'm looking for things to stabilize. We're starting to see some premium in some of those deferred contracts, and I think that's well priced in there.
All right, well, we need to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll have more Ag Day.
Contact Arlen Suderman by email at arlen.suderman@intlfcstone.com. Ag Day weather, brought to you by Alivo Seed Treatment from Bayer.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Your meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, as we look at this drought monitor, obviously the northern plains still the concern, but some rain's coming in.
Yes, there is, and that may very well help. It's already helped a little bit over the past 4 weeks. In fact, if we go back 4 weeks, you can see a lot less drought in the central plains, but a little bit more in North Dakota. So you can watch things improve in the far northern plains and get slowly worse as we look at the central plains as we've gone through the past 4 weeks. And you can see the expanding area of dryness just in the last week across much of the central Mississippi Valley right there. All right, let's take a look at the weather map today. It's still dry in those areas, but here's what Clinton was talking about, a big, wet weather maker coming out of the northern Rockies into the northern plains. We showed you that yesterday. There's the remnants of Irma, still causing a few light showers in the northeast, but that's pretty much kaput. It's heading out to sea, and you can see the stationary front will be the focus, especially north of there, for showers and thunderstorms as we head through the next 48 hours or so. There's late in the day today widespread rains in those drought areas, eastern Montana, much of North Dakota, parts of South Dakota. We head on through tonight and you can see more of that developing a little farther east, and there's still some showers, even snow showers in the higher elevations of the northern Rockies. Cold front down to the south still kind of causing a few scattered showers and thunderstorms, mainly in the afternoon for parts of the southeastern portions of the country. And Jose, we still have to watch it, but we're kind of thinking and hoping that this front to the north of it kind of helps steer it out to sea and keep it away from the east coast as we head into next week. Precipitation estimate, past 24 hours, we've seen some from the remnants of Irma, but most of it's really been that new system coming across the northern Rockies, adding in the next 36 hours. You can see 1 to 2, maybe 3 inches of rain for eastern Montana, western North Dakota, parts of South Dakota, and into Minnesota. So pretty heavy rains up there for a change. High temperatures today. The heat is on from Omaha southward, but look how chilly it is. Highs only in the low 40s in central Montana. Low 90s by the time you get to eastern Nebraska. A lot more comfortable in the Ohio Valley and into the northeast. Lows tonight, same idea, kind of cool in the Ohio Valley, warm in the plains except for the far northern plains, and we continue to see that front come a little bit farther east during the day tomorrow. Here's the jet stream. You can see like what we've been talking about is we go to a ridge in the east. It gets cut down from time to time, but it's basically a flip-flop of what we've been seeing with a big trough out west. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll head to Alamogordo, New Mexico. First of all, good deal of sunshine and warm, high of 90. Mitchell, South Dakota, breezy and afternoon thunderstorm. Could be heavy, high of 83. And Erie, Pennsylvania, mixture of clouds and sunshine and pretty comfortable, high of 75.
When we come back, we'll talk replant decisions and when it makes sense for the bottom line. And plenty of country kids are playing sports this season. We'll tell you about a handy new way to help teens heal from concussions.
This is Machinery Pete, inviting you to check out my new website, machinerypete.com. Offering farmers tens of thousands of used equipment listings to search, let Machinery Pete help you find and value your next piece of used equipment.
The challenge of spring planting usually carries through to harvest. In today's Farm Journal College TV, Ken Ferry talks about replant decisions and how the issues we saw with emergence are impacting yield expectations.
And there was a lot of good decisions made this spring, I think, based on what I've seen, and there was a number of them that weren't so good. We make a decision on whether we're going to replant or not by ear count, not by population.
Okay.
So in some cases it took 20, 25 days to get all the corn up. Well, unfortunately, the last 6 or 7 that came up were so far behind the rest, they're not going to put an ear on. And we're talking about in the row. So if I have low ground that came up late, high ground that came up early, that's okay, but individual plants. And as we stretch the tape this spring, we count the population and we come up with 32,000, let's say, out of 38. But 6,000 of them come up so late that the odds of them putting on an ear. So when that corn plant's real small, if it gets more than one leaf collar behind its neighbor, it's at a high risk of not putting on an ear.
Okay.
It's 2 behind, it isn't going to put on an ear. And not that 27,000 plants can't produce a lot of grain.
Sure.
In our hand harvested work that we do, we recognize some varieties can produce as much as 10 bushel per thousand. So there's a lot of yield punch, but you can't have 25, 26, 27,000 ears mixed in with 36,000 plants. Because in order to get the big bushels out of a low population, you got to get the sunlight, you got to get the water, you got to get the nutrients. So if there's 6,000 or 7,000 weeds out there that are catching the sunlight, catching the water, and not letting the plant expand, you can't get to it.
When we come back, we'll show you how a phone app is designed to help teens overcome concussions.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit Kubota.com today.
From all of the new studies, concussions are more of a concern for parents than ever. Now, if your kids have ever had a concussion, you know doctors typically recommend keeping screen time to a minimum in order to let brains rest and heal. But new research out of the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center may change that. Doctors wanted to know if it was possible for teens to use their phones, computers, or TVs during recovery, but it needed to be the right kind of usage, and so they developed a game and social app for the phone. In teens treated for concussions who didn't use the app, only half reported improved symptoms. The other half say they got worse. Teens that did use the app, all of them reporting improvements in both symptoms and optimism.
It connected people to a small number of close social connections and let those close social connections go through that recovery journey with them. It's easy to feel helpless, and it's nice to have actionable items that you can work with that the doctor can recommend.
I'd wake up the next morning and be like, well, I feel better. Like maybe this stuff actually works. Maybe I should have been doing what the doctor said all along.
Now, this study focused on teens whose symptoms hadn't improved on their own at least 3 weeks after the injury. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. For Mike Hoffman and Tyne Morgan, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.